once again, we are starting this week's show once again off with more tragedy, more deaths, more celebrity deaths that have happened over the last week. I swear this is the fourth, I think this may be the fourth or fifth show in a row that I've had to start off like this. I mean, it really is something. I remember when Rev was still here, I said, I think it was around 2021 or 2022, I said this decade, not week, not year, but this decade was going to be absolutely awful for celebrity deaths. And my reasoning was that true celebrity, true fame, has really only existed for a short period of time in our country's history. And it is sometime true celebrity. It existed from the advent of the TV, and the proliferation of the TV in the 1950s up until the balkanization of mainstream mass culture with the internet and social media. So I'd say about 50 years, from the 1950s to the 2000s. Now we're all split up again, just like we were before TV existed, where everybody sort of has their own, devices, and we get to pick and choose what we watch and what we see and what we hear. And if we don't want to hear or we don't want to see other things, we don't have to. We really don't have to. Pretty much the Super Bowl is probably the only mass culture event, and presidential elections, what we're about to have right now between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris. We don't really have mass culture events the same way we used to. And because of that, the people who are popular, who are famous, are nowhere near the level of magnitude of star that, say, people who became famous in an era of 3 television networks and radio and just newspapers were. And so the generations of people who got famous in the 1950s and the 1960s and 1970s, well, they're at that age. They're at that age where they are starting to die off, and it is happening in rapid succession. Like I said, this is probably the 4th or 5th week. We just lost Frankie Beverly, James Earl Jones, Tito Jackson, and now we are losing some more people. We are losing John Amos from Good Times, the father, the patriarch of Good Times. He earned an Emmy nomination for his role in Roots as well. A lot of people forget he was in Roots. He was 84. Obviously, he was best known as James Evans Sr. on Good Times, which featured one of the first black 2-parent households in media. And this was very important. I want you guys to hear what he had to say about why he chose to leave Good Times in 1977. This was a strong black man who was not about to allow his people to look bad. I want you to hear what he had to say about why he left Good Times.
It was imperative to me that this black father, he was not going to live the way that black men had been portrayed through the media. And I made it clear as time went by, the writers, some of them became incensed that I was of the opinion that I knew more about a black father than they did. And it got to the place where I almost had a confrontation with several of the writers. I mean, a physical confrontation. And I guess they got tired of having their lives threatened every week about something as meaningless, seemingly meaningless, as a TV script. So that's what prompted Norman Lear to make the call. He said, we can't do this anymore. I don't think we'll see anything comparable to the Evans family on TV again anytime soon. We made our statement, we did the job, and we all moved on.
So that's John Amos, the patriarch, James Evans, on Good Times, who passed away this week at 84 years old.
Damn!
Yes, Florida. Yes, Florida. I feel exactly the same way. It's unfortunate. But it really is sort of weird that Good Times was only on the air for 5 years. 1974 to 1979. That's it. And you see that with a lot of shows from like the 60s and 70s where you'd be like, oh man, this show must have been on for like 10 or 12 years. And it'd be like, no, it was on for 3 years. It was on for 5 years. You go, what? And it's because a lot of the shows from that era were so good at capturing the sort of zeitgeist of American culture and who America was and what America was at the time that the quality was timeless. And so I grew up watching all these shows. I wasn't even alive when these shows were on the air, but I grew up watching them. In the 80s and 90s. I mean, I watched these shows the entire time I grew up. You know, The Jeffersons, All in the Family, Good Times, Sanford and Son. I watched these shows my entire life like they were new shows. When I was a kid in the 90s, it was just like, oh, this is it was just like any other thing on TV, and the reruns kept running because people kept wanting to see them. And now you have shows on the TV that have been on TV for 10, 12, 15 years, and I've never even heard of it. Be like, oh, this is some shows celebrating its 10th year on TV. You go, what? I have never seen any of these people in my life. But again, that goes back to the balkanization of our media and our culture. We will never see another James Evans because there won't be an audience that is collectively captured the same way, all watching the same TV shows at the same time. And I absolutely mourn for the death of mass culture in this country. I mean, we could argue it's not the worst thing in the world to have all the options we want, to watch whatever we want or listen to whatever we want when we want to listen to it. I certainly don't even watch TV. I watch YouTube pretty much. I pretty much just watch the Bulls, the Bears, the White Sox, and like, the news, like the local news on TV. I rarely even turn on my TV outside of watching local news and sports and like the Bulls, Bears, whatever. I forget TV's even a thing sometimes. And again, that goes back to sort of the balkanization of American culture. We're able to watch what we watch when we want to watch it. John Amos will forever, because there will be no replacement, he will forever be Black America's father. And that's a hell of a legacy to have. As I said, he played the adult Kunta Kinte, the centerpiece of Roots, based on Alex Haley's novel. He earned an Emmy nomination. He also starred in Let's Do It Again with Bill Cosby and Sidney Poitier. He was in Coming to America and Coming to America with Eddie Murphy and Arsenio Hall. He was in Die Hard 2. He just was a solid black male presence for a long time. And again, there is no replacing John Amos. There is no replacing his place in American history and TV history and black history. And I think it's important to take a step back and to just think about that for a minute. So God bless him and his family. Unfortunately, he wasn't the only celebrity death we had this week. Dikembe Mutombo, another guy I watched the whole time I was a kid growing up in the 90s. When I was a little kid, he was the best defensive player in the NBA. One of the things was nobody could dunk on Dikembe Mutombo until Michael Jordan did. Michael Jordan obviously got him. But the crazy thing is that Dikembe Mutombo is a Hall of Fame basketball player, one of the greatest defenders who ever lived in the sport of basketball. But he is best known as an ambassador. This man spoke 9 languages. He went to Georgetown University and belonged there. He wasn't just there to play basketball. No, Dikembe Mutombo belonged at Georgetown. He speaks 9 languages. He spoke 9 languages. He founded the Dikembe Mutombo Foundation in 1997, concentrating on improving health, education, and quality of life for people in the Congo. He became the conduit for the development of basketball in Africa. He became the conduit for that. And so now when you see things like South Sudan almost beating America in the Olympics, in Olympic pre-trials, I think it was, a few months ago, that's Dikembe Mutombo's legacy. He served on many boards like the Special Olympics, the CDC Foundation, and the National Board for the U.S. Fund for UNICEF. This man was much bigger than the sport of basketball. He was an asset to his country and an asset to the human race. So rest in peace to Dikembe Mutombo. We lost another sports figure. This one a lot more controversial. Pete Rose, the all-time hit leader in Major League Baseball, a 17-time All-Star. I mean, this man played more games in Major League Baseball than any other human being ever. More plate appearances than any other human being ever as well. Obviously he was thrown out of baseball due to him being him betting on baseball. And I actually do believe that was a warranted decision. I know a lot of people might not agree. A lot of people think they should have just let Pete Rose in the Hall of Fame. But I've said the same thing about Pete Rose as I say about Barry Bonds, about Alex Rodriguez, about Roger Clemens, about Sammy Sosa and Mark McGwire. All these people all made a lot of money playing baseball. A ton of money playing baseball. Probably Pete Rose not as much as the others because he came along before the big contracts came along. But they got their salary. But you don't have to honor people who disgrace the game. And if you cheat in baseball, you get caught cheating like taking steroids, PEDs, or you bet on baseball, then your penance should be not being honored by baseball. And so I actually do. When I was younger, this is another one of those things that come with age. When I was younger, I used to be all for letting Pete Rose and Barry Bonds and Sammy Sosa and all those people in the Hall of Fame. But now I say, maybe, the best thing to do is to leave them out as a deterrent to people in the future. But there is no denying that Pete Rose was one of the most brilliant baseball players who ever lived. I saw a video recently of Pete Rose lecturing Frank Thomas, Big Frank Thomas, my favorite player growing up for the Chicago White Sox, one of the best hitters of the 90s, along with Barry Bonds and Ken Griffey Jr. I saw him and Alex Rodriguez, obviously statistically one of the best hitters ever. And these two guys were getting a full lecture on how to hit baseball, how to deal with being in a slump from Pete Rose. And it was incredible to see Frank Thomas, this Hall of Famer, and Alex Rodriguez, a man who, because he took PEDs, probably won't be in the Hall of Fame anytime soon, but statistically is one of the greatest players ever. These two men were in awe watching Pete Rose explain to them what to do when they are in a slump. And they were like, how come I didn't think about this? Well, you're not Pete Rose. That's why. You're not anywhere near that brilliant about hitting a baseball, even though you guys yourselves were great at what you did. He was a savant. And it is a shame that he made the choice to bet on baseball and get himself banned from baseball, because baseball definitely could have used his brilliance in the latter stages of his life. Rest in peace to Pete Rose. He was 83 years old. And last but not least, a man I knew primarily as an actor. I know a lot of people know him as a songwriter in country music, Mr. Kris Kristofferson. For me, as somebody who, I'm not the biggest country guy in the world, so I haven't listened to a lot of his music. But I will say that in these times, his words about Palestine, saying, I found a considerable lack of work after doing concerts for Palestinian children. If that's the way that it has to be, that's the way that it has to be. If you support human rights, you got to support them everywhere. Kris Kristofferson said that 30 years ago. He was sympathetic to the plight of the Palestinians before we had all of the information we have now since October 7th, when a lot of us just really started paying attention to just how genocidal and maniacal the Israeli state is and has been in recent years. And also when it came to Sinead O'Connor, who, I paid tribute to her when she passed away last year, because she was right about everything, about the Catholic Church, about racism against black people in this country and in Europe. She's been proven to be right about, she had been proven to be so correct about so much stuff and suffered and paid such a huge price for it. Kris Kristofferson was one of the few people who defended her and came to her defense when people were really dogging her out because she called out the Catholic Church for abusing children. I think we forget that in the early 90s, calling out the Catholic Church for abusing children was a courageous act. And she did that, and Kris Kristofferson was one of the few people who came to her defense. And so, rest in peace to her. So for John Amos, Dikembe Mutombo, Pete Rose, and Kris Kristofferson, I want to give them a 10-bell salute. We'll be right back after these.